First of all, I want to say thank you so much for coming. You know, there are not many of you here, but I certainly appreciate those who came, and hopefully I'll make it worth your while. I just want to say this. My poetry, I'm a poet and an artist, and I express myself through my poetry and my art as I use that to tell history. I'm an educator. I taught in school, elementary school, and in New York City. But there wasn't a lot of African American history that I grew up with, and didn't get to see that, but I made sure that I brought that to school. I also was initially, I spoke more about peace and racial harmony. And so my poems tended to be kumbaya. And I said to Jim, these days, my poems are not kumbaya. And he said, that's okay, baby. When you see people, you're kumbaya, but you write like a rattlesnake. So I don't know if this is on.
I think it
Doesn't sound, I don't know if it's supposed to be. Cindy? Okay, she's gone. Wait, I think this is supposed to be on. Yeah, there is. Now, yeah, I saw the light, green light, and it came on. Okay. So let's begin. I'll just tell you this. I wrote this initial part when my work was at the Kennedy Museum, and that was really an honor. And I said, I thanked Wendy Northcross from my church. And I have to say that church has been an important part of my life. A lot of the opportunities that I've received is because of church. So Wendy Northcross, the founder of the Kennedy Hyannis Museum and president, she goes to my church, and we were on committees together. And that is how I got my art into the Kennedy Museum. And so I thanked her, and I said, I'm truly honored to have this opportunity. Oh, my mother would have loved to see this. My mother loved the Kennedys. And so if she ever knew that my art was in a Kennedy Museum, she would be beside herself. As it is when she was sick and failing. And I told her about an interview I had. She said, so Robin, how did that interview go with what's his name? On CNN. Oh, Anderson Cooper. Robin, how did that interview go? Mom, no, I never had an interview with Anderson Cooper. But anyway, I'm going to begin now. I feel the powerful spirit of the ancestors deep within my soul. Early one morning at 3 a.m. during the summer of 2018, I woke up clutching my pillow, trembling and hearing this. We are weaving our thoughts into yours. We are weaving our thoughts into yours. I was convinced this was a message coming from the ancestors. Words were being channeled into me as I took dictation. This ended with the poem entitled The Ancestors Speak. And you can hear that poem if you go on. By the way, I did a Black Lives Matter series. They are on YouTube. If you go to Robin Joyce Miller, to my website, you can listen to Black Churches Matter. And that is in that poem is there. And so I'm not doing that today because I've got too many poems to do. But anyway, next. I believe I've been honored with the task of giving voice to those who were forced to remain voiceless as they suppressed the anger, emotional hurt, and physical pain that bubbled under the surface. I see this as a sacred mission, and I keep this in the forefront of my mind as I do this important work. These people, yes, people, were forced to acquiesce to the cruel demands of white power and supremacy. This is why many of my poems take a bitter, biting voice. This next poem is The Negro Slave Speaks. You, Mr. Master, sir, you who have no soul, you look to take, yes, take, own, for your own sake. You snatch, you claim, you kill, you maim. You are of something, not of God. Of world, of country, of wealth, oh yes. Owning the world you must through selfish, wicked stealth. To you I am inferior, you make me bow, you make me bend, my head is held down low. Superior this game you play with your mind, a fantasy you grow. Oh, the ugly game you play, but does that make it so? Christianity you claim, knowing the Lord, knowing his name. Satan knows that too. That is no claim, it is your game, his message you have lost. What claim is this you think you have? You even burned the cross. Spinning around, hopeless, unfound, having no soul, you search in the dark for treasures still unclaimed. You may own my very body, claim all as you must do, but never, no, never will you take hold of my mind, my dignity hidden from you. Nor will you claim my precious soul, for it too has been concealed, locked away in heaven with God alone. Yes, God rest my weary, God rest my heart, God rest my humbled soul. Thank you. Obviously, that was the voice of the enslaved. Now you will hear my voice speaking to the enslaved. Portrait of a slave. In your eyes, I see you. See through your ebony skin to your soul deep within. Your stare, void of hope, so far away. A place not seen, yet a place you long to be. In your eyes, I see you, I know you, and I weep. I'm sure you're all familiar with this photo showing Rosa Parks sitting on the bus where she was arrested. Well, I was born 3 days before this event. As a child, I felt I was drowning in the civil rights movement. My parents followed every event through the black and white, our black and white TV, then Look, Life, and definitely Ebony and Jet magazines. These magazines were constant. Did you go to head time? These magazines were constants in my house. The struggle of the civil rights movement and works of Reverend Martin, Dr. Martin Luther King were frequent topics in my home and church. 6. President Kennedy and his family were also spread across our coffee tables. He was a hero to many African Americans. Recently, I visited the message Kennedy gave on the evening of June 11, 1963. As an adult, I was moved by his powerful words. I invite you to listen to his moving speech when you have time. This is the poem and art I created next. This is the poem and art I created for this moment. A president speaks to the day. It was the age of Camelot in America. President John Fitzgerald Kennedy was at the helm, but it was not smooth sailing. An American storm was threatening. The Jim Crow ship was tossing and testing the strength of our nation's promise, the promise of liberty and equal rights for all its citizens. Once again, the Negro was in the belly of the beast, the bottom of life's ship. Justice was sinking, civil rights were drowning, cameras were flashing, reels of video were rolling, and the world was watching. Alabama's Governor George Wallace worked to maintain white power and privilege, blocking the path to justice, blocking the rights to equality, blocking the Negro from entering the white space of his state's university. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. held Lady Liberty's torch high, lighting a path to a new future, fighting for America's Negro citizens. Negroes were patriots too. It was the evening of June 11, 1963, when the voice of the president resounded across the nation. It was a necessary voice, a voice to quell the fires of frustration, the fires of discord burning in every city, north and south. President Kennedy boldly declared equality for all is a moral issue. It is as old as the scriptures and as clear as the American Constitution. Kennedy did not stop there. He asked Congress to act to authorize the federal government to carry out and secure the laws of desegregation in public education, to offer greater protection for the right to vote. He offered hope. He paid tribute to those, both black and white, who were on the right side of the law. He made it clear their acts were based not on legal duty, but out of a sense of human decency. Kennedy recognized that this is one country, not because of one superior race, but that all people have used their talents to contribute to its greatness, and all should reap the benefits. Finally, he called on fellow citizens to work towards a colorblind constitution that would grant equality of treatment for all. Thank you, President Kennedy, for joining Dr. King and the civil rights movement with the message of the day, the moral message of the day. Next. President Kennedy spoke to the ideal America. Unfortunately, as to be expected, all Americans did not respond positively to this clarion call to justice. But it put the wheels in motion, leading to the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Act of 1965. Here we are in 2020, I said 2025 then, 2026, almost 63 years after that speech, and we seem to have regressed back to a very divided America. Shifting gears as to why I do this work. At the age of 5, my 18-year-old cousin from South Carolina informed me that our family came from African people. Well, I did not receive this news with a sense of joy and pride. In fact, I was rather horrified. I ran around screaming, "I'm not African, I'm not African." I believe this next poem expresses my feelings at that time. Don't want to be no African. Don't want to be no African, no Lord, not me. Dark, shiny skin, just plain ugly. Don't want to be no African. Why would I be? I don't run through the jungles or swing on some tree. Don't want to be no African, no Lord, not me. Too much shame, too much pain, no proud history. Can't be no African. Who would I be? Not a person, but something enslaved, shamefully. No, Lord, don't want to be no African. By that tender age in my development, I had already inhaled the poison and drank the Kool-Aid. I had allowed the white gaze of the world to shape my thinking. I had painfully internalized America's powerful, purposeful, dangerous, and false narrative created by systemic racism. I was an African-American child who wanted no parts of Africa, my native culture. I fully understood and lived within the mores of a Eurocentric culture. Like many children, I thought about these things and wondered, why were we at the bottom? This brings us to the title of this exhibit, A SANKOFA Journey, the African in America. What does this title mean? SANKOFA is an Adinkra word. There are many Adinkra symbols that speak to the wisdom of the Akan tribe of West Africa. This symbol is often depicted as a bird holding the egg of the future in her beak as she turns back. SANKOFA means go back and get it. Go back to your history. Go back to your origins. Go back to your roots. Here are a few Adinkra symbols. These are the ones I did in my house. These are my favorite ones that speak to me. You can see the SANKOFA bird with a few others. There are approximately 200 Adinkra symbols. These symbols are used in many African textiles. Here you see a piece of mud cloth in my house. That has the symbol representing God is supreme. I think it's Nyame, something like that. God is supreme. But let's go back to the SANKOFA bird. Here's a poem that I wrote. From the wisdom of the Akan people comes the SANKOFA bird. She moves with style, she moves with grace, but she is not alone. She belongs to a collection of symbols that guide the morals, the thoughts and deeds of the African tribe that created her. The SANKOFA bird bends and twists. She is flexible and confident. Her elongated neck reaches back. In her mouth is the egg of the future. For she understands that we are lost when we fail to acknowledge the things of the past. It is our foundation. She beckons us to return to a time and place, a place that may or may not hold sweet memories. However, that is not the point. We must learn it, embrace it, whatever our origin is, then draw on it for strength. So let the SANKOFA bird direct your path, a path that leads to the wisdom of the ancestors. In the summer of 2006, I took my first SANKOFA trip to South Africa and Swaziland with my New York City church. Swaziland, by the way, has now been named Eswatini. They said that Swaziland was that name was a European name, so now it is called Eswatini. We even went to Robin Island, where we all took turns standing in Nelson Mandela's cell. In 2010, Jim and I traveled to Morocco and Ghana, where we journeyed to Elmina Castle and Cape Coast Castle. We saw the door of no return, the cells and the dungeons deep beneath the ground. The experience was painfully daunting. This has been part of my SANKOFA journey. Sometimes when a person hears the word slavery, their thoughts may go as far as, wow, people are forced against their will to labor. However, the true devil is in all the minute nuances and details that this life actually entails. In order to do this work effectively, I've decided to willingly marinate myself in these devilish and horrific details. The first journey I wrote about was the faithful journey from slavery to presidency, and I have the book over there. As I spoke about the book and repeated the title, I became disturbed because African Americans did not come from slavery. I was saying from slavery to presidency. And I said, we came from Africa, where there were kingdoms, huge difference than coming from slavery. So as a child, thinking that I came just from slaves, enslaved people, was very sad and sorrowful. And that's for many people. Next one. This work, next. Okay. This work is titled From Kingdoms, Not Slavery. There's a great deal to unpack here. However, I'll just pick a few images. In the center is Mansa Musa, the richest man that ever lived. He is holding a gold nugget. Mansa means king. He was the king of Mali and lived in Timbuktu. There was so much gold in Timbuktu, Europeans had to travel through the most difficult and dangerous deserts to get there. It was a long distance, and that is where the term from here to Timbuktu came from. And so some people didn't even think Timbuktu was a real place, because people said it's, oh yeah, from here to Timbuktu. Well, Timbuktu is a real place, city in Mali. And the University of Sankore, located in Timbuktu, focused on theology, astronomy, mathematics, and law. You can see it at the bottom left corner. There's also a Nubian pyramid in the top right corner. And that's kind of interesting because I think I'll tell it next. Let's go to the next one. By the way, there are more pyramids in Nubia than Egypt. When you think of pyramids, the first thing that usually comes to your mind is Egypt. Also, I think that the Nubian pyramid design is more intricate and beautiful. Nubia is now modern day Sudan. Ancient Egyptians were people of color, some darker than others. However, it has always been clear that Nubians were dark Africans. That is most likely why Europeans didn't embrace or focus on their achievements, even though these two cultures had many similarities. And by the way, I think the 25th dynasty, that was when the Nubians took over Egypt. So for quite a few years, the Nubians conquered Egypt and took over Egypt. And there was a lot of similarity in their culture and ways. Next. After reading several books and articles on the colonization of Africa, I grasped a new understanding of European interest in Africa. It was important to me to depict the explorers with blue and green eyes. In literature, these features are always the epitome of beauty. Many people of color have experienced European beauty as outsiders. I use these features differently in my next poem, When They Saw Africa. I saw this discovery of Africa and her resources as the European dream. FYI, for this next poem, obrigado means thank you in Portuguese, in case people don't know. But it's interesting. I actually got this from Michael's or one of the stores or Joanne's, and it said dream. So it was just unpainted wood. It had dream and it had the shape of Africa. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just bought it. But when I was thinking about this, I went, that was their dream. Africa was their dream. And so I used that. So here we go with the poem. With Portuguese tongues spoke obrigado to the sun as they looked to the sky, to their gods up on high when they saw Africa. With kingdoms to conquer, they laid down their flags, they built their dungeons, called them castles, when they saw Africa. With so much land, the Dutch wanted some, determined to settle, determined to claim. They took on the South, they changed their own name. That's when they became Afrikaners, when they saw Africa. With suns never setting, crowns to ornate, needing more jewels to make them more great. Brit seized more land, more. Yes, that was the plan when they saw Africa. With colonies growing, the French wanted in. Bonjour, c'est la vie. I want some for me, for moi, oui, when they saw Africa. With ice cold blue eyes, it was no surprise. They spotted blue diamonds, pure like the skies, when they saw Africa. With its lush green pastures holding rich brown soil, they saw the land with purpose. Their green eyes sparkled for more when they saw Africa. With a coast gold filled, they schemed to pillage at will. Their schemes turned to cash, cutting lives as they passed. Filthy rich, now at last, when they saw Africa. With people from tribes, they saw not their lives, not their families, never their humanity. Men with strong bodies, no thoughts to their minds. Women voluptuous, just concubines, when they saw Africa. With determination and greed for their own selfish needs, they traded their guns, they traded their souls, for their hearts had grown cold. No goodness, no mercy, no mission from God. Can't you see? Use your eyes. Just savagery. It was not valor, it is not truth, it is not courage, not bravery, pure evil it is, called slavery. Then they deemed themselves superiority. And that is what they saw when they saw Africa. Now let's talk about the African journey to America, which was nothing like the immigrant journey, a journey for a better life. This horrific voyage is known as the Middle Passage. Next. This is the journey to hell quilt. Enslaved Africans walked 3 to 4 months to get to the coast. Africans were taken from the hinterlands, which are the inner lands. Here we see the slave castle quilt showing images from both Elmina and Cape Coast Castle. Next. This next work includes images from the Journey to Hell and slave castle quilts. This is the door of no return. The lock tells us that once the enslaved left, they could never return. And by the way, before Jim is going to get up and do the door of no return, the reason I like to use the word, and more people are using the word enslaved instead of enslaved people, instead of slaves. They were not slaves. Enslaved tells what was done to them. So they were people. They were not slaves. They were enslaved, which really speaks more to the people who did it, not to them. Next, the door of no return. You're going to do that now, my dear?
Am I really here this morning, hearing drums song for the very last time? My family, my identity, are stolen. And in chains, I leave this country of mine. A slave object, no longer sold at, no longer free. The sailors, the ships are arriving. My Lord, what will become my destiny? Thank you.
Thank you, but don't go away. Capture the chat help. Here it is. It's right here. Yeah, it's kind of tricky. Here you are. There you go. He's a poet as well.
Capture to chat help. My ancestors' culture and way of life stolen from a homeland they may never again see. To take a journey from capture to chat hell, the dehumanizing process called slavery. At first, kidnapped, disrespected, and tortured. Then shackled around the neck, hands, and feet. Deprived of space, slumber, nutrition, and water. To destroy the will, surrender, mission complete. Thank you.
Thank you. Where we are. Okay, 27. Good. Coming to America. This piece is made from a drawer and has 3 sections. Jim, my husband, is a collector. So when I eyed his African chess pieces, my creative mind had plans. He was kind enough to hand them over for a good use and a good cause. I thank him so much. He recently said, "Where's the rest of them? Do you?" And I gave them to him yesterday, and it's been a while now, but anyway, okay. So that's what those pieces are from his African chess set. 28. Next. Okay. Here we see Elmina and Cape Coast Castle in Ghana. The Africans have been captured and are in chains. Art from My Journey to Hell and Cape Coast Castle quilt are in the background. Next. This section represents the Middle Passage journey. The bottom section shows the enslaved Africans in America on auction blocks with chains. Next. My Very White Church, West Parish of Barnstable, has Amistad Sunday annually. After reviewing the movie, I was most distressed by the scene where 15 captives were tossed into the sea because the slave captain realized that there weren't enough supplies and food for the amount of people on board. My pastor had me recite the next poem in the middle of his sermon, saying, "Now Robin will tell you what it was like on the ship." And so let's go to the next one. We see the sun setting on the lives of these people. Then you see there is no anchor available and no hope in this one. By the way, just to let you know, for people who are aware of art, I was inspired by Matisse and his Icarus, his jazz collection. And so when I saw that, and he had a heart in there, they had a red dot, and I was like, that's it. When I talk about how when they died, their hearts froze. And so I used one of his designs and then created the others. Now for Amistad Overload, and I'm going to play it. Yeah, and I'm going to put Amistad Overload. All aboard, down to the bottom. Breathe, down to the belly of the beast. Breathe, down, down, no air, no light. Breathe, down into darkness, out of sight. Breathe, down into stench. Why must I breathe? Breathe, faith turns to fear. Breathe, hope vanished from here. Breathe, down to the moans, down, down, shrieking cries, down songs of pain, now slave lullabies, down to clanging chains, down to shackles and pain, piercing metal into skin, down come drops of blood, then fear again. Too many slaves, too little supplies, only remedy, toss 15 slave lives. Push, pull, body pains, push, pull, shackles, chains, up, up,
slither of light, up, up, up from the night, eyes now squinting, partial sight. On to the deck, breathing fresh air, far from Africa, who knows where. Push, pull, shackles, chains, 15 people with no names, stripped of dignity, stripped of pride. Overboard! Someone cried. Mercy, grace, both denied. Down to the bottom, dreams never to be, taken from family, then tossed to the sea. Down past the coral, no air to breathe, filling with water, heart murmurs freeze, transition made. Ah, but within the transformation, there is a blessed assurance. They are received by their Creator, the all-knowing, the all-loving, no longer enslaved, chains removed, no longer naked nothings, spirits clothed, souls sparkle within the golden glow, within the light that outshines all other lights, for they have been made ready to join the ancestors. A new kingdom awaits. It is finished.
Thank you. Next. We can clearly see how Africans were treated. Africans were just savages. This is an advertisement from P.T. Barnum's American Museum in January 1861, promoting a show featuring South Africans who were brought to the United States to be put on display. These men were advertised as savages who had never been in civilization and made to wear animal clothes. Actually, they were men with labor jobs. One of them was 17-year-old Sturman Yangis, who was found hanged months after his arrival. He had committed suicide because of the humiliation of the experience. There he is. Oh, no, wait, that was him. Let me go back. Yangis is represented here. Harvard dissected his skull, then went on to create several plaster casts. The rest of his remains were mysteriously lost. By the way, this image has been taken down from the internet. Glad I captured it when I did. Right after our new president, it was no longer on the internet. Yes, our history and America's cruelty to African Americans is being erased. This is Cudjoe Lewis. He looks rather dignified, pictured on the left. He traveled on the last slave ship from Africa, known as the Clotilda. There is a great deal about his story and to tell about his story and helping to create Africa Town in Alabama. Textbooks talk facts, not emotion and humanity. We get so used to seeing naked, enslaved African illustrations on ships that we become desensitized. Let the words of Mr. Lewis in his dialect speak to your hearts as you listen to his thoughts relayed to Zora Neale Hurston. And by the way, I saw so many pictures like this, I kind of just assumed they were all they just were naked people when I saw this. Here, listen to these words. When we're ready to leave the crew boat and get in the ship, they snatch our country cloth away from us. We try to save our clothes. We ain't used to be without no clothes on, but they snatch all off us. They say, you get plenty of clothes where you going. Oh, Lord, I'm so ashamed. We come to America so naked, and the people say we naked savage. They say we don't wear no clothes. They don't know that the men snatch our clothes away from us. As soon as we get in the ship, they make us lay down in the dark. They don't give us much to eat. Me so thirsty. They give us water twice a day. So I just wanted you to hear, these are the things that are never told. We just look at pictures and we make assumptions, and I know I made them. I believe that being naked and exposed before the world is the ultimate humiliation. Um, Please excuse me if you find the next poem too harsh, but I had to write it and create the storyboard entitled Who Are the Savages? Africans and their descendants, branded as cannibals, demonic, uncivilized, amoral, less than human, apes, savages, yes, savages. However, I invite you to take a closer look. Who snatched Africans from their native homes, women and children alike, shackled and chained them, marched them into dungeons of hell, dragged them onto wretched ships, whipped them past the point of blood and tears, tossed them into the sea when they got sick or simply to collect insurance money, raped the women, humiliated the men, terrified the children, separated families, starved these people of air, food, water, dignity, then scrubbed them with bristled brushes and oiled their bodies to be sold like stocks, cattle, commodities, so they could become filthy rich, yes, filthy, then pass that wealth down for generations to come so they could look down their superior noses with disdain on those who built this very nation. From the railroads to the great universities to the Smithsonian Institution and even the White House. Who claimed religious piety, then burned crosses, created a false slavery Bible that excluded the story of Moses, but focused on verses like this: you must obey your earthly masters. Who held public lynchings like garden parties, full of joyous laughter and arrogant, ruthless pride, in grand celebration, that's right, grand imperial wizard type celebration. Who pressed cigarette butts into the bodies of non-violent freedom riders or hurled dangerous objects at these citizens who were asking to be treated fairly? What policed sick dogs on children during the 60s movement, then hosed them down for good measure, shot unarmed blacks, choked a man for selling cigarettes, then held a knee on another man's neck for $20. That's right, $20. Oh, I can't breathe right now. Who killed thousands, probably millions, for the color of their skin, then escaped murder charges as they laughed their way from these unjust courts parading their victory. Oh, somebody needs to hear me today. Then came January 6th, an apocalypse. Who climbed the walls of the Capitol, attacked police, trampled each other, one character dressed as a savage beast with horns and painted face on full display, creating a catastrophic scene, and marked this day as a dark and ominous nightmare that America will never forget? I ask you, in all truth, with this scenario, knowing who has profited through the generations from these egregious deeds, who should carry the shame for these atrocities? Now I ask you this: who are savages? I'm sorry, guys. None of you have anything to do with what went on in the past, but it's important that we know it and that we understand it. It's 1852. American slavery is well in place. There were abolitionists fighting to free the enslaved. One of the most powerful voices of the time was that of former enslaved Frederick Douglass. He was asked to speak to a group of abolitionists on July 4th. What a speech he gave on the 5th of July. He could not imagine speaking and celebrating the 4th. This speech has been named What to the Slave is the 4th of July. I read this speech and got busy on this next poem. What I want to say, though, this poem was so powerful. I found it more powerful than the I Have a Dream speech. The fact that he was born enslaved, the vocabulary that he used was outstanding, outstanding. So here's the poem. Back in 1852, a former slave named Frederick Douglass let America know what he thought of their Independence Day. Oh, his speech was brilliant. Didn't mince one word. To slaves, this day of freedom was totally absurd. When I read his speech, this is what I heard. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty. My country, 'tis of the sweet land of liberty. of thee I sing. And the slave chorus sang, I'm gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. Gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Your national greatness, your swelling vanity. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain. That's a little higher than my pitch, but anyway. And the field hand refrain was, I'm going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. I'm going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Your joicing, your sounds of rejoicing are empty. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave through the night, that the slaves were still there singing. I'm going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. I'm going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Your shouts of liberty and equality for the land of the free and the home of the brave. Meanwhile, back on the plantation, I'm going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. I'm going to jump down, turn around, pick a bale a day. Your prayers, mere bombast. God shed his grace on thee. Your battle hymns, fraud and deception. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. More prayers, impiety, hypocrisy. God bless America, my home, sweet home. And the Negro kept on singing, oh Lordy, pick a bale of cotton. Oh Lordy, pick a bale a day. So what to the slave is the 4th of July? Just another cotton picking day. I like that one. See, as a child, I ran around singing, I'm gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale. I didn't know I was singing a slave song. It wasn't until I grew up. One day it was in my head and I went, wait a minute, what was I singing? That was a slave song. I'm gonna jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. And so I played that with my friends. I don't remember exactly how, but we sang that song. And then it dawned on me. Anyway, I found use for that song. So here we are. Now I'd like to introduce Harriet Powers, an amazing quilter. Only 2 of her quilts exist today. Her Bible quilt is at the Smithsonian, and the pictorial quilt is at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. She was born into slavery in 1837. She died in 1910. So she reached emancipation. There was a meteor shower in 1833. Although this happened before she was born, people were still talking about it. She depicts these falling stars in her work. So in her other quilt, see those, see up there? You see the meteor, and those were her examples. Okay, next. Faith and Bible stories were very important to her. Her Bible quilt includes a few stories from the Old Testament. Next. I was moved to create this mixed media collage quilt and create the poem, Harriet's Prayer. And we're going to do that poem. This was a fun poem for me to do. I started speaking like a slave, and when I played it first, but I let Jim hear it. He was like, aren't you going to correct your English? No, this is not Robin. This is Harriet speaking. Okay, so here we go. Harriet's Prayer. It's just me, Lord, Harriet Powers, your humble servant. Been working this Georgia plantation all my days. Mighty grateful for letting me get to the other side of slavery. Bless my hands, bless my threads, want to use my tattered clothes. Rags now, if I speak the truth. But they got me from slavery to here, warmed my old bones through all them weeping years. Plenty enough sorrow to go around. Some cloth make me think back, like the day they whipped my minty. She was wearing this here sack. They ain't have to do her like that. She was always a good child, precious to me. She only wanted to read the Bible for herself. Never mind. I done filled her head with your stories. But now that we's free, things ain't much better. White folks don't act like they know you. Can't figure who they praying to. I do, but I do. I know you, Lord, and I'm fixing to learn them something with my stitching and my cloth. You give me hands and a mind to work my faith. Gonna tell the story of Adam and Eve in that garden. Heard about gardens out yonder like Africa. Wondered if that's where they was.
Gonna tell what Cain done to Abel. Abel's blood cried out. Did our blood cry out to you too, Lord? Gonna tell about Noah and that big boat they call an ark. All them animals, gotta be Africa, ain't seen nothing called a lion or an elephant or a leopard in these parts. Been dreaming about a ladder too. Like what Jacob had, it got a special meaning for us. Us colored folks got everything to do with getting to freedom. Maybe that be the reason Master ain't got no ladders nowhere in sight. Gonna tell about the baptism and your son, Lord. Ain't gonna forget about that dove carrying your spirit. Gonna proclaim that great getting up morning, the moon are bleeding, the stars are falling. Anyway, Lord, don't want to tire you none with my prattling on, but I promise you, folks gonna know. I plan to weave your glory in every stitch I sew. In Jesus' name, amen.
By the way, so I named her daughter in the poem Minty. And I named her Minty because when I've done my research and my ancestors, I can go all the way back to 1791, Minty McGurk. And so that is my maternal grandfather, his line goes up to 1791. So, and so of course she was enslaved. It's 42, okay? Moving right along, here is the story of John Brown and his direct connection to the Battle Hymn of the Republic. As a child, my mother taught me the song John Brown about his body lying or moldering in the grave, and I thought it was pretty creepy. Anyway, this was a Yankee abolitionist marching song. Even as a young one, I realized that it was the same music as the Battle Hymn of the Republic, but I didn't know why. My mother didn't know either. I said, Mom, that's that music that when I heard the battle hymn in church, I heard the Battle Hymn of the Republic. I was like, that's the same music as John Brown's body. She was like, yeah, okay, honey, but didn't know why. I realized it was that, but I didn't know why. Since doing my research, I have learned that Reverend James Freeman Clark felt the John Brown song was irreverent and requested that Julia Ward Howe, who was a poet, write new lyrics to the original tune. So I'll just say this, there was a abolitionist gathering. And so during this gathering, all these abolitionists were around and they were singing John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave. That was a typical song that the Union sang. And so he spoke to her, and overnight she came up with Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. In one night, she wrote that. Here's the poem that I wrote. John Brown's body lies a moldering in the grave, but his soul goes marching on. A Union marching song, the soul of the Civil War, sung with pride, power, and determination, uplifting the memory of this abolitionist, a man before his time, a soldier in the army of the Lord. Brown called on this country, America, to reckon with its duplicity of liberty and justice for all. Harper's Ferry, 1859, a raid, a rebellion, 21 men, black, white, including 2 sons, willing to die for the enslaved to be set free, and die they did. But his truth is marching on. Julia Ward Howe, an abolitionist, penned new lyrics, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, beautiful, powerful, and forceful, laced with Christian faith, no obvious mention of slavery. Just wondering when we sing, mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, do we understand this is abolition we're proclaiming? Many in the South still wave the Confederate flag. Would they choose not to sing it if they knew? Let's study the last stanza, getting to the heart of slavery. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. While God is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Yes, John Brown, you are a hero. Thank you. So what did I know about the enslaved Africans through a good portion of my life? Well, not much. When I went to school, very little was taught on this subject. My mother made sure that my brother and I watched the movie Gone with the Wind. During my college years, I saw Roots. Roots was a great introduction to slavery. However, there was so much more to learn. I believe that Africans were just poor, pitiful people without skills. I mistakenly and ignorantly thought that white people taught all the skills to the Africans. Didn't Governor DeSantis tell us that slaves acquired skills that helped them? Okay. even if they did. So where were they gonna market these skills? Who was gonna pay for their skills anyway? This is how you create a foundation of white supremacy, as people of color all over the world are devalued, diminished, and demonized. Thanks. What information does the United States Library of Congress give us? Well, agriculture. Enslaved Africans were skilled farmers, herders, and navigators of waterways. They cultivated crops such as rice, indigo, cotton, tobacco, hemp, corn, and livestock. These are skills they brought to America. Next. Crafts. Enslaved Africans were skilled blacksmiths, woodcutters, and printing pressmen. Next. Music and dance. Enslaved Africans brought their own musical traditions, including singing, dancing, and playing instruments. They also practiced patting juba, a complex and rhythmic clapping of hands. Next. Language. Enslaved Africans brought their own language and folklore. By the way, I was inspired to speak Spanish, actually, after going to Africa a few times and realizing that Africans, many of them spoke two or three European languages and their own tribal languages. And I said, ¿por qué no yo? Why not me? And so that is what made me want to really, really hablo español. Okay. And we're up to 48 now. Okay. After learning all this, and the many structures built by enslaved Africans, I created a slave hand collection. Make no mistake about it. Slavery and the many skills and talents brought from Africa benefited America, not the enslaved. Slavery was American gold. Next. Slave hands were busy building America, one nail, one brick, and one plank of lumber at a time. Next. Here are 15 landmarks built by enslaved people: White House, Capitol, Statue of Freedom on top of the Capitol, Smithsonian Institution, Wall Street, Trinity Church, Fraunces Tavern, Faneuil Hall, Fort Sumter, Harvard Law School, Georgetown University, University of North Carolina, Monticello, Montpelier, and Mount Vernon. Next. After all that building of American landmarks, what did their homes look like? Take a look at land of the free and home of the slave. Next. As I mentioned before, enslaved Africans brought their skills of cultivating indigo to America. Americans knew nothing of indigo cultivation. Africans had been cultivating indigo for centuries, spanning back to ancient Egypt. 53. As quiet as it was kept, many women were involved in the buying, selling, and cruel management of the enslaved. They were her property. White Women as Slave Owners in the American South is a detailed book on women's involvement in slavery. Eliza Lucas Pinckney was one of those slave-owning women, and staying on the topic of indigo, Eliza gained great status and wealth from her indigo plantations. Recently, I listened to a historian from South Carolina. He lectured on her, and he praised her as one of the most outstanding and influential women in America. The only reference to slavery was to mention her 3 plantations that were given to her by her father. So I will do this poem now. The truth of the matter is, there was no picture taken of Eliza Lucas Pinckney. Online, they have different images for her. Some of her when she was because she was also called the Indigo Girl. So some of her pictures of her as a girl. This one fit my story the best. So I picked that one and painted that. But if you notice the background, in the background are the enslaved people doing the work. And here is that poem. My name is Eliza Lucas Pinckney. My Lieutenant Army father put me in charge of 3 plantations in South Carolina, and I was only 16 years of age. A mere girl running those plantations. What were you doing at 16? I'm sure by now that if you know anything about indigo, you've more than likely heard of me. They call me the Indigo Girl. Look it up, you'll see. There's a book with that title, and it's all about, well, you know who. By the way, pay no attention to the background. Focus on me. Most people who had plantations headed for the city to their second homes to socialize and get some well-needed relaxation. But not me. I had a business to run. I was all about the indigo. I studied my subjects in England. Botany was my favorite. Rarely, if ever, have I sullied my hands in the soil. Well, bless your little heart for asking. Of course I have helped, you silly goose. Nevertheless, I became a planter. By the way, pay no attention to the background. Focus on me. There were many crops I could have chosen, but I was smart and knew there was a real future in indigo. And I also knew just how to exploit. Oh my goodness, did I just slip? I meant to say, I could call on experts who were more than anxious to school me with my little project. Pay no attention to the background. Just focus on me. I used my British connections to create a demand for this beautiful blue gold. You need to know that I was never selfish. Oh no, I shared my knowledge with all the neighboring plantations so that South Carolina could thrive while we could all reap the benefits. I don't mean to brag or anything like that. That wouldn't be polite for a southern genteel lady like myself. But nevertheless, that is how I became one of the most extraordinary and influential women in the state of South Carolina. Oh, no, wait, I mean the nation. The nation's first president, you know him, George Washington, was a pallbearer at my funeral. I think I might have mentioned this before, but in case you forgot, pay no attention to the background. Just focus on me. Where are we now? And yes, slavery was alive and well in New England. Onesimus was enslaved by Puritan Boston minister Cotton Mather. He introduced the method that Africans used to inoculate. So that was kind of interesting. What was it? What's the disease? That people got smallpox. So during that time with smallpox, he said, hey, wait a minute, here's what we do in Africa. We prick some of the infection from the person who's sick and put it in someone else, and that creates, America knew nothing about that. So it was an African slave enslaved African who brought that to this country. And by the way, more African Americans died of smallpox than anybody else. Okay. Anyway, here's my poem, Slave Hands. What hands have been both bound and tied to ships upon the sea, then sold on wretched auction blocks like stock's commodity? What hands have touched the fertile soil, have cultivated grain, the rice, the wheat, the corn, each husk through sun and pouring rain? What hands have raised the master's child, have washed white tears each day, with barely time to tend their own, then watched them snatched away? What hands have taught America to inoculate, then smallpox deaths claim Black lives at the highest rates? What hands have blue become from cloth of indigo, forever sewing blue jeans, white profits, millions grow? What hands have fed a nation, cooking day to day, slaving in hot kitchens, grand feasts the Southern way? What hands have built the Capitol, built the White House floors, built this country's nation, then suffered Jim Crow laws? What hands have been so humbled, restricted, never weak? Slave hands have prayed through endless storms, yet still they heard God speak. We sing God bless America above the other lands, a nation rich with blessings, for God hath blessed slave hands. Slavery's over, yay! No more whippings. Well, okay, let's move to the next slide. We've got Reconstruction and 17 African Americans in Congress. This is good, right? Next. But then we also had White Rage. Next. Billie Holiday sang about it in Strange Fruit. And this one, Haunted by White Hate. I wrote this when we had a racial incident in Chatham in 2023. And I wrote this. Tears of sorrow, tears of pain, haunted by white hate. I've been to Elmina, Cape Coast Castle too. I've seen the chains, imagined the pain, touched the bars, imagined the scars, entered the cells, the visceral smells, heard the shackles shake. I am unnerved, oh God, haunted by white hate. Why are Blacks so often feared? Headlines every day. Police and white supremacists see us as Black prey. It's historic. Slavery, whippings, lynching time, cross burnings, unpunished crimes, pure evil. Blacks cannot escape, feeling unprotected, haunted by white hate. Emancipation, Reconstruction, white folks go insane. Black code laws, convict leasing, peonage, slavery once again. Tears of sorrow, tears of pain, haunted by white hate. Many years pass, slavery's ghost lasts, because just the other day, politician talking, telling people this. Slavery wasn't so bad. In fact, it was a benefit. All those skills you gained, working slave hands, cotton picking for the man, yeah, definitely a benefit. But I can't stop the tears of sorrow. Can't stop the tears of pain. Hoping for better tomorrows, I am again haunted by white hate. Emmett Till, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain, George Floyd, the list goes on and on. I know we're supposed to face the rising sun of our new day begun, marching on till victory is won. Oh, my spirit's weak. And so are my feet in this our native land, burdened with this pain I have. Oh, I feel the weight. Can't deny my feelings, Lord, haunted by white hate. You might ask, how do I do this? This is cathartic for me. I have to get it out. I do the research, I study, and then I go, I keep hearing the words of David Keene, the director of Katuitt Center for the Arts, after George Floyd was murdered. He said to me, Robin, white people need to hear Black stories. And I said, I'm the one to tell you some Black stories. And then I went about doing the research. And I was shocked with all the things that I've learned. I did not know a lot of the information. So some people have said to me, oh, I didn't know that. And they feel bad. And I go, listen, don't feel bad. I had to immerse myself in this. I had to dig and search and research. So it's not something that you're just going to hear casually. So as we go to this one, and by the way, there's a children's book called, I forgot the name of it, but a friend of mine, Floyd Cooper, did the book. He illustrated it. His grandfather grew up in Tulsa, and he's from Oklahoma. Unfortunately, he passed about 3 years ago, but that was the last book he did. He was a children's illustrator. He did lots of beautiful books. But anyway, speaking of white hate, let's take a look at Tulsa, Oklahoma massacre of 1921. The white community was not comfortable with the outstanding Negro achievements on display in Tulsa. It was important to know that there was a huge risk for openly defying the racial order that governed America at that time. How dare a Negro community step out of their place? So here is separate but never equal. Want them separate doors, separate bathrooms, separate churches, separate schools, separate neighborhoods, separate. Other side of the tracks, separate. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate from, well, let's be polite, Negro ghettos, Negro slums, Negro poverty, Negro lives, separate but equal for Negroes. Then came Greenwood, Black Wall Street, ridiculous, impressive schools, unheard of, beautiful theater, outrageous, prosperous bank, unthinkable, affluent lifestyles for Negroes? Not here, not now, just ain't right, way too white. Don't they know separate was never, ever meant to be equal? That we will not tolerate, that we will obliterate. Bang, boom, burn to the floor. Greenwood, Tulsa, you are no more. Ah, but Maya once said, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. So still, we will rise, we will rise, we will rise. Now, let's take a look at that sneaky 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution abolished slavery and involuntary servitude in the United States and its territories, except as punishment for a crime, except for punishment for a crime, from slave to criminal with one amendment. Okay, and so here we are. So I was just going to say, this was the beginning of the criminalization of Black men when they came up with that amendment constitution. Okay, this next poem was inspired by Sam Cooke's Chain Gang song. Huh, ha, huh, ha. What's that I hear? Well, don't you know? That's the sound of them boys. You know them Negroes, they working on the chain gang. What's that I see? So many stripes, they blinding me. That's the mark. Cell bars, vertical, body bars, horizontal. We want all to see slavery may be over, but they ain't free. Didn't bring them from Africa to roam around doing as they please. They's our Negroes. They need to get back to work. No time for them to be idling. Vagrants on the road. They got to tote that bale, got to carry that load, because the South needs to rise again. They've been the wheels keeping us a moving, and they need to stay where wheels belong, on the bottom of things, just rolling along. By law, we still got them. That's right. 13th Amendment say criminals as good as slaves. Well, they criminals now. Black code laws. Oh, let me catch one of them idling fools. Sheriff Billy Bob knows just how to round them up like shooting fish in a barrel, like black coffee in my cup. Power, force, brutality, and the law. Yep, that's what we got. Gonna work them Negroes to the core. Oh, they thought slavery was bad. Well, we about to give them something they ain't never had. Oh, you know how they do. Let them sing, let them moan, let them cry, let them groan. Ain't got to pay for them. Disposable they is. Work them till they drop. They all the same. We can get another one just like the other one. Huh, ha, huh, ha. Now you know what you hear. That's sweet music to my ears. That's the sound of them boys. You know them Negroes. They working on the chain gang. And I'm just going to say this. The chain gang was worse than slavery. And it was worse than slavery because they weren't owned by white people. They were on their own, which meant they had less value, which meant, they wouldn't work an enslaved person to death because they needed it. That was their property. You don't destroy your property. But when it's not your property, then you work them till they drop, and then arrest another one and get another one and work them till they drop. Get another one. Work snatching people off the street. Oh, that sounds kind of familiar. Isn't that going on today? There's some snatching people off the street. Okay, well, anyway, I didn't realize how that was going to flip into the day. But anyway, now we're at 64, please. Sharecropping was another form of slavery. It was definitely a trap, as these hardworking people were cheated out of what they should have been paid. After working the land for a year, sharecroppers were told that they still owed for rent, use of supplies, etc. They were also required to share their crops with their white landowners. Notice that in the art, they are trapped behind the chicken wire. And I think that piece is here. Yeah, here it is. Yeah. They're trapped behind the chicken wire. Okay, here's that poem. We are the sharecroppers. We've shed the shackles and the chains, but the black on our body still remains. Still bruising our hands, still breaking our backs, tending the fields, growing the crops, picking the cotton. Nightmare don't stop. Thought emancipation brought jubilation. Thought our dream of freedom meant we was free. Thought we finally got some of that, liberty. But like slavery, we still suffer discrimination, intimidation, exploitation from this so-called emancipation. White folks still watching, just as mean as rattlesnakes, bringing us hopelessness, anger, despair, ailing with sadness, frustration, and fear. Government say we get 40 acres and a mule, got us hoping and wishing, thinking like a fool, because now we know, as sure as we can see, that was some mess never meant to be. Here we is, Lord, remember us? You delivered us from slavery, and we grateful and all. But the more we work, the more we owe. We work all year, no dollars to show. Still dirt poor. That's a shame and a fact. Don't see no escaping this sharecropping trap. Next. America has never really wanted to give up her slaves. So they carefully put slave images on the cover of boxes. Here is a book about it entitled Slaves in a Box. The Strange Career of Aunt Jemima, written by Maurice Manring. Next. I also would like to tell you about these titles. Aunt or aunt, I said to say aunt, but aunt, uncle, and brother. You know, and these were, it says those were the only civil titles given to Black people. Why not? They were all around them like family, just not family. Mr., Mrs., and Miss were reserved for whites only. So there was Uncle Tom, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, Uncle Remus. Did you ever stop to think all those aunts and uncles that weren't really they weren't relatives, okay? But yes, we called them Uncle Ben, and that was the names that they gave them. And Uncle Remus and Breer Rastus. By the way, Breer Rastus was a character in Uncle Remus. Breer is short for brother. So he was Brother Rastus because he was a deacon. Okay, in the story, he's a deacon. So he was Breer Rastus. And so I didn't know that Rastus was a name that they used to call Black people. And I just read about it. And right after I read about it, that same week was the opera with Malcolm X. Do you remember the opera? There was an opera with Malcolm X. And they mentioned it in there. And I had never heard that before. And they said something about Rastus calling us Rastus. And I was like, yeah. And Lynn came with me, and so I was like, Lynn, didn't I just tell you that in the car? I had just been talking about it, and then we could sit and see the show. So that was exciting. Anyway, I would like to tell you, no, Uncle Remus, let's go to 67. Uncle Remus is the main character in Disney's Song of the South, and of course, the white children adore him. Absolutely. Next one. You see, Africans have always been excellent storytellers. In West Africa, they call them griots. They are usually men in the village who are often musicians as well as storytellers. We know this because most photos show them with instruments. So on the plantations, there would be storytellers engaged in weaving tales with white and Black children gathered around them. 69. There were always whites overseeing the life of the enslaved. Joel Harris Chandler busied himself taking dictation. He gathered several stories, wrote them in dialect, and created the Uncle Remus tales, which had the character Brer Rabbit and a deacon named Breer Rastus. Breer is dialect for brother. Chandler became rich, pilfering the creativity of Black people. But then again, this is pretty much an American theme. 70. By the way, the cream of wheat man is named Rastus from a character in the Uncle Remus tales. I found the cream of wheat ads to be the most offensive. I'm going to have a difficult time reading, but I'll do my best in that one. Maybe cream of wheat ain't got no vitamins. I don't know what them things is. If they's bugs, they ain't none in cream of wheat, but she's sure good to eat and cheap. Cost about 1 cent for a great dish. Then it's signed Rastus. These images are to always remind us that people of African descent exist to serve white people and maintain a subservient presence in the company of whites. These offensive names and images were not taken down until 2020 after the George Floyd murder. So when I saw that book, I said, wait a minute, there were more than just Aunt Jemima. Let's look at some other slaves on the box. And so I created this work. And I had all these old wooden utensils. Anyway, here's slaves in a box. Slavery's over. No, go back. Yeah. Slavery's over. Chain gang's gone. Jim Crow packed his bag, said he's moving on. What? Sharecropping, long been a thing of the past. How we gonna make this slavery thing last? This is America, land where I'm free. It ain't quite the same without slavery. Remember that song, Land of the Free and Home of the Slave? Oh, what? It didn't go like that? Home of the Brave? Wish I was in Dixie. Damn, we had it made. Who's gonna raise our kids, plant our corn, fix our breakfast at the crack of dawn? Oh, wait, ain't we still got a sort of kind of consolation? You know, slaves in a box. Use your imagination. Yeah, they always been like family, ain't your ma, Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben, Rastus, Cream of Wheat boy, ready, willing to serve with a big wide grin. Oh no, what? They took them away too? Damn! Good things just don't last. Got me weeping and crying for the genteel past. Black president, 1619 president, critical race theory, woke education, diversity, equity, inclusion. My head's about to spin. World's moving too fast. This has just got to stop. Just want to go back, turn back the clock. And since it looks like we can we please just keep our slaves in a box? Thank you. Going back to George Floyd, I wrote this next poem shortly after his death. Black Lives Matter too. So many people were saying that when we say Black Lives Matter, as if we were to say that white lives did matter. No, we were just saying, can you hear us? Black Lives Matter. And so I would have preferred it to say Black Lives Matter too, not just Black Lives Matter, even though people should know what that means. When you see the flag, the red, the white, the blue, do you feel those colors include folks that look like you? When you see the symbol, the one that says you're free, why do you feel the need to take a bended knee? Could that bended knee go with that bowing head, praying for God's mercy for all the blood that's shed? They say we don't respect the country we should love, wave the flag most proudly in blue skies up above. We helped to build this nation, our blood, our sweat, our tears. We fought along with others. We conquered our own fears. Now we fight a battle within our native land. We lift our tired voices to God's unchanging hand. We too have loving families, sons and daughters we adore. You think our hearts don't ache and bleed, losing children that we bore? We also need protection from the men in blue. America, please understand, Black Lives Matter too. By the way, my next door neighbor, she is someone who loves Trump. I love her and I'm kind to her and we're good to each other. However, one day we went to her house and she was watching NASCAR and it was during the pledge and they would do it. She goes, see, these people don't feel that they don't get down on their knees. They're not on their knees. They know how to stand up and pledge and respect America. Ooh, look at the time. Jim, I think we gotta go. That's how that went. Okay, so there are different people with different points of view. And here we are, we're at the end. Oh, America loves her patriotic songs, but I've wondered if the lyrics ring true for all its citizens. I will end by playing my song to bless America. I'm sure you know the melody. Thanks. My song to bless America. Where is your soul, America? You boast of liberty. You sing a song of freedom. Such grand hypocrisy. God bless America. Wondering about the songs you sing. Praying to a mighty God for what our God must bring. To a land claimed free. To a people claimed as brave. I know who's free. Not folks like me, dragged on a ship across the sea, to slave on a land that's free. Oh, my labor's free, and I best be brave, because what it takes to be a slave, don't nobody know what bravery is till you fight to survive on the land you live, where the people claim their liberty and stole your right to live freely. Then sing to God most gratefully about how he gave them liberty. But does God bless a selfish prayer that has no heart, that does not care for all the people that he loves, whose light he shines on from above? Oh, what a prayer that must be.
claiming a land for you and not for me. Yes, I know that slavery's over, but it certainly has a ghost that haunts its very nation, a country God loves most. The colors that we honor, the red, the white, the blue, oh, they have a meaning. I'll tell you what feels true. The red is for the blood that's shed, especially our Black sons. The white is always power, power in laws and guns. The blue is how we suffer when family we have lost. Black is disrespected, Black bodies simply tossed. God bless America, the red, the white, the blue. I learned the words, even cried out, Lord, please make these words come true. That God would stand behind her and guide her to have a soul like you. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. Care for my people safely so we can claim this home. God bless America. Help us where we stand. God bless America. Bless this troubled land. Thank you.